But with that said, we're going to go alphabetically because we like to live dangerously, even though the alphabet is not our collective strong suit. And that brings us to the Dallas Mavericks, who incidentally might technically be like the only Kyrie Irving team. But I thought before actually getting into their vitals, Grant, that this was funny. In the framing of the report of Kyrie's preferred teams, they noted how the Mavericks and Knicks are sort of best set up to do something, but they're both more focused on Jalen Brunson. That is, how far has the perception of Kyrie Irving fallen that Jalen Brunson is the bigger priority over him? And it's, look, I'd do the same thing. I want to make that clear. I'd 100% do the same thing.
It's Jalen Brunson summer. We just got to get used to it. Like every year that somebody defines free, well, I mean, if Kevin Durant shakes loose, then it's Kevin Durant summer. But yeah, I mean, good time to be Jalen Brunson. Like you're in high demand. Like you've got all this leverage because your own team kind of needs you pretty badly, and some other teams want you like inexplicably badly, like the Knicks. And so it's just like really good, high on the list of guys you would like to be this summer is Jalen Brunson.
Good for him too, because I bet if the Mavs would have offered him that max, that we'll call it the Josh Richardson special, he would have taken it, but they didn't offer it, and now he's going to make probably close to double, rather than 56 million. He might be over 100 million. To the Mavericks vitals, though, their key free agents: Jalen Brunson, if anyone didn't see that coming. Notable non-guarantees: Maxi Kleber, his $9 million salary guarantees on July 3rd. They will let that guarantee. He's also extension eligible if anyone cares. Then the most important non-guarantee is Frank Ntilikina. $2 million is his salary. I imagine they would keep it, and they should because he's their best player. Maybe their second best player. Luka's okay sometimes. Other notable extension candidates: Dwight Powell. Please, oh please, Mavericks, do not extend Dwight Powell. And then Christian Wood, who they just acquired. Notable trade exceptions: they have, look, it's expiring today as we're recording this. It was the Josh Richardson $10.9 million trade exception. I wish they would have done something to like sort of fold that over or used it. And I guess they still technically could. So this podcast might get outdated if they decide to use that trade exception. Otherwise, they don't have any really big ones as of now. Their best spending tool is awkward. I have it at the mini MLE because even with Jalen Brunson's hold, they're like really close to the apron. And so even if you lose Jalen Brunson, you're not going to open up unfettered access to the bigger MLE to where you're comfortable hard capping yourself unless you dump other salaries. So I have them at the mini MLE. If something weird happens with Brunson or they dump a bunch of salary, they have the potential to get to that bigger MLE. And then Grant, now that I rambled through that might have been the slowest vital read that we've had yet. What are your thoughts, general impressions, needs, priorities in free agency? I think it probably starts with Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, right. No, I think your preamble was necessary because they're kind of I don't know, it is complicated. They have a lot of moving parts, even which is weird for a team that you could also just imagine kind of looking very similar at the end of free agency. I mean, I put them in the contender class. I think their needs are fairly clear, although I think it's difficult sometimes to like, because what we're saying is, well, it looked like they needed X, Y, and Z against the Warriors, who went on to win the title. So it's like you kind of have to, which they won't need that type of stuff. The problems the Warriors present are not the same as other teams. It's just kind of how it works. But so I think they need, additional shot creation is always great. I think you'd like someone, if you could, with their limited resources, that can put the ball on the floor more than Reggie Bullock can. Same with Dorian Finney-Smith. Both those guys are really useful, role players for this particular team, because when you have Luka, it's okay if your supplementary offensive guys have like one or two things they can do. And I think they need some rim protection that, like Maxi Kleber is a good shot blocker, but he's not the guy that stands in there and deters stuff around the rim. He's more of a switch guy. He's a good perimeter defender. I think they need someone in there that can kind of shut things down, because again, that's kind of where the Warriors started to have success in that series. And, whether that's an issue against a lot of teams, I don't know, but it was against a very good one. And if the Mavs want to be very good, then you got to worry about that stuff. I think there's the Brunson situation is obviously kind of top of the list. I feel like it's going to take $100 million to keep him. And as we talked about earlier, before we started recording, I think you said like, that's kind of an okay number for them. I don't know if it's an okay number if you're another team, just because you're sort of, I don't know. We know Brunson works well alongside Luka. We know that it's a good fit there. So maybe you're willing to pay a little extra. Plus, you send the message to teams around the league that if you come to Dallas and have success, you will get compensated. There's that element too. So, but after Brunson, they're looking at fairly like, low end free agents, which I don't know if we want to get to those now, but playmakers, big guys that can block shots, like that kind of thing.
I agree with everything you sort of just said there. I do think the Christian Wood trade probably gives them a little bit more flexibility if they want to do anything on the front line. He's a really good offensive player, and I think there's more mobility to him on defense. And I'm very interested to see just what he looks like in a system where you have Kleba, Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, and then Jason Kidd did coach his team really well on defense when you look at sort of the barometers of like what they were able to do in transition, which I'm not equating to effort, but those are like more controllable, especially in certain lineup packages. And I also think, I had mentioned this at one point on the previous podcast, but Christian Wood averaging over 20 points per 36 minutes while shooting better than 59% on twos and 38% on threes during that span. The only other players accomplishing the same are Michael Porter Jr. and John Collins. And Michael Porter Jr. hasn't even played a ton. Christian Wood's played. So I think that gives them flexibility if they want to go for like a shot blocker type or all defense at like the 4 or the 5, because you have like Bertans and Powell and Dorian Finney-Smith will play the 4. So you can move around stuff there, but it feels like they need another front court component. I'm with you. The question I wanted to ask you is, if you're the Mavericks, would you go 5 years on Jalen Brunson, who turns 26 later this summer? Let's say what if he's willing to accept, the rumors the Knicks are going 4 and 100, which would be $25 million a year. Is he willing to stay? Like, what do you even get to at that point? If it's a 5th year, that's where it gets for the Mavericks specifically, because that takes him into, I think it's through his age 30 season at that point. It's like, he's a smaller guard. It'd be a thought process. And you're not, maybe the discount is that 5th year, $20 million. That's still 5 years, 100, and $20 million. That's something to think about, because they can't offer, those raises, like the 8% raises versus 4 or 5 now, like that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme. It's that 5th year that gives them the real advantage if they want to use it.
Yeah. I think my stance on it is, I'm not doing it unless I have to. Like, if he comes back, I want to see what the Knicks are going to do first, or I was going to say, or whoever else, but like it's going to be the Knicks if he's going to get a big offer.
I think there was even reporting that the Pistons were just, they have Jaden Ivey now, but that they were just out. Like, any team that you thought was going after Jalen Brunson probably looked at the arms race between Dallas and New York, was like, nah, we're good. Yeah,
this is you say it all the time. The whole "it only takes one" idea to like set the market for a player, and like, Brunson has the one. Like, the Knicks are the one. And so if I'm Dallas, I that 5th year I'm keeping in my back pocket. And if I have to use that and I just can't let him go, then yeah, I think I do it, just because it's too difficult to replace him. I would just one other note on it. It's not necessarily pertinent to free agency, but the Clippers are a team that has a bunch of like mid-tier salary guys to package up in a trade for a star. And Dallas has that too. With, say Tim Hardaway on the high end, down to Powell at like 11. Hardaway is 19.6. You got Dinwiddie in there. You got Bertans. If they didn't have these encumbrances, on their first round picks based on the Knicks trade, which I think may stretch out to like 25. They don't know if they're going to convey until then.
I think their 2023 was top 10 protected, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll double check that. You're right, though, that they can't trade a pick before 2025 functionally.
Yeah. So all that, they would be really set up well to consolidate and trade some of that stuff with draft assets attached for whoever, like you name it, in terms of big stars, but they just don't quite have the draft flexibility. I wonder if, they may not have to think about this unless Brunson is not back, but if they do need like a replacement or an upgrade, however you want to think about it, they're kind of halfway there to having like a really solid package to put on the table.
The thing they could do, and you would need Brunson's cooperation, is if you're losing Brunson, can you make that a sign and trade to New York where they're giving you that 2023 pick back, or just a 2023 pick that you're then sending to another team in addition to other picks to make stuff happen. This would be if they decided they wanted Kyrie or Kevin Durant, like that might be the pathway. Can you do something to get the encumbrances off that 2023 pick? What makes that tough is the Knicks are clearing cap space specifically just to sign Jalen Brunson. So they're calling your bluff. They're not there yet, by the way, though. So if they don't want to dump Cam Reddish, like maybe that's the mechanism through which you work. there's also like their best salary. They have salary matching tools that are short term, but like that Tim Hardaway Jr. contract after his injury does not look good. And that's why I feel like this team could technically be largely set, which is why you really don't want to lose Jalen Brunson, because your flexibility there to make any sort of replacement. I haven't even considered like free agency guards they could go after, because they can't get a DeLon Wright or a Tyus Jones. Like they just won't have the money. And so I'm for them. I think re-signing Jalen Brunson makes a ton of sense for them. I would probably give him a 5th year, just because I don't think that the deal is going to end up being, it'll be detrimental maybe for New York. It won't be detrimental for Dallas because they have the ecosystem within which he can work well. Maybe he wants a bigger role, though. We saw it with Jeremy Grant, leaving a really good team for a shitty team. Jalen Brunson would be doing the same. There's nothing about the Knicks that makes you think that they're going to be better than the Mavericks anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and like, unless it gets completely out of hand, I think I'm talking about Brunson, even if you got that 5th year on there, he might still be a tradable number. Like, it's not like that. It's not looking like it's going to be just this albatross contract, that they couldn't possibly get off of if they couldn't use to move on with, they wouldn't have to give up their entire draft future to do anything. So it's like, I think he's going to be overpaid, but it's sort of that's just what you're going to have to do in these specific circumstances to keep him.
Do you have any free agency targets that you like, or even if it's trade targets for this team? I will say I had them as an Isaiah Hartenstein team, and then he probably might have been too expensive. I don't know if the mini MLE gets him. And now just Christian Wood, I think that renders that suggestion moot. That was one of my favorite destinations. Isaiah Hartenstein and Luka would have been hell of a pairing.
Yeah, I had him too. I mean, he's just going to be on most of these, frankly. So, but yeah, I agree. The Wood thing, just kind of, I don't know. I still think if you could get him for the taxpayer mid-level, like I'm doing it. But I don't know. I think Goran Dragic feels like kind of a likely just minimum signing. I forget where I read that rumored, but that makes sense to me. I don't know how much he'd actually play, but if it's a throw a bone to Luka type of thing, that makes sense. I had Bamba on there. I don't know what I don't imagine Orlando is going to match almost anything in restricted free agency on Mo Bamba. And then like another kind of pie in the sky possibility is Kevon Looney. Technically the mini mid-level would be a raise, but I think the Warriors will pay him above that to keep him. And there may be 1 or 2 teams with even more spending power that are willing to go up to the full mid-level potentially. I wouldn't necessarily do that, but I could see a team or two convincing themselves that was worth it.
I thought this would be, and maybe it's more so if Jalen Brunson leaves. And again, it's probably then predicated on, can you access the full non-taxpayer MLE? This would be a good Victor Oladipo team based off what he did in Miami close last year. I also wondered if he's not a free agent, but like Kelly Oubre Jr. might be fun on this team if you can work out a trade for that. I know Charlotte's going to be looking to cut money. You don't really have a deal that's going to save them a lot of money, and he doesn't fit into that Josh Richardson trade exception that probably expired just as we were having this conversation about the Josh Richardson trade exception. This would be a great TJ Warren destination, I feel like, too. And I thought, if you're still looking to kind of juice up the front line, I still don't know what Chris Boucher is going to cost in free agency. He's 29 years old, which is why I would say they probably can't afford him. But it's also like, okay, Biggs, who, he's not like, he doesn't need to explode to be valuable, but the way that he moves, especially on defense, his appeal is there. So that would be curious. I also like Juan Toscano Anderson for this team. Like, just fits the mold of, they have the Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, a bunch of versatile guys on the wings, or in like Finney-Smith's case, essentially a combo forward. And I think that's the level of signing that they're ultimately going to be looking at, aside from Jalen Brunson. And I say this in a good way, that I don't think their free agency / offseason needs to be super interesting anymore unless Jalen Brunson leaves.
Yeah, I mean, you're also forgetting that just once Frank Ntilikina realizes his full potential, as I'm sure you're anticipating, they won't need anything.
Listen, all I'm going to say is they didn't get to the conference finals with Luka before Frank Ntilikina. It was after they signed Frank Ntilikina that they made the conference finals.
Your galaxy brain just exploded on the screen. I don't know if people are going to be able to see that.